In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, one God, Amen. God's chosen one. Listen carefully. This is not a coincidence. This is divine intervention. Heaven has paused everything around you just to get this message through. You are not like the rest. You never were. You were never meant to blend in. God marked you, handpicked you, and set you apart before you even took your first breath. But something has wounded you so deeply, something that still echoes in your soul. There is a pain inside of you that no one sees. But heaven has seen it all. Every silent tear, every night you laid in bed wondering, why did they do this to me? None of it was ignored. You've mastered the art of smiling through storms, of surviving what others would have collapsed under, but you can't fake it before God. You didn't need to. That wound wasn't just emotional, it was spiritual. It wasn't just betrayal, it was sabotage. You didn't imagine it. You weren't too sensitive. You weren't overreacting, you were targeted. Why? Because the enemy could see what you couldn't. He saw the calling, the favor, the fire inside of you. And he knew if he couldn't destroy you, he had to wound you enough to make you quit. The pain was not random. It was a direct hit to your soul. Planned, timed, and executed by forces of darkness, using people who looked like they loved you, chosen one. You must understand something. Your heart has been under siege, not just by people, but by principalities. You've been walking through fire, but there's a reason you haven't been burned. It's because God has preserved you through it all. As we read in Isaiah 43, when you walk through the fire, you will not be burned. The flames will not set you ablaze. That verse is not just encouragement, it's your testimony. You didn't just go through it, you're still here. And that matters more than you realize. Some of you were wounded by family, the very people who were supposed to protect you. Some of you were betrayed by friends, lovers, leaders. They didn't just hurt you, they altered how you see yourself. And now you're here wondering if you'll ever truly heal, if you'll ever feel whole again. The answer is yes. But first, heaven must expose what's been hiding behind your smile, that wound. Yes, that one is not meant to stay with you forever, but you cannot heal what you refuse to face. And God says it's time. Not next week, not next year, now. There's something divine about this moment you're in. Because right now, God is not just touching your heart, He's speaking to your destiny. The reason you've been carrying this pain so long is because the world didn't give you the tools to release it. They told you to move on, to toughen up, to let it go. But your soul never got closure, and your spirit never got justice. But today, justice begins today. God is saying enough, enough, pretending enough, hiding enough, letting the memory of what they did control your present. You're about to be set free, not because you're strong enough, but because you're chosen. Because what was meant to take you out will now become the very thing that launches you forward. You don't need revenge, you don't need answers, you need revelation. And heaven is about to reveal everything. You are being delivered from the inside out. The wound was spiritual, but so is the healing. And when God heals, He restores what was lost and multiplies what was stolen. You will rise not in spite of what happened, but because of it. Let them talk, let them doubt, let them think you're done. They don't know who they're dealing with. They don't know what God is doing behind the scenes. They don't know the kind of anointing that rests on your life, but they're about to see because after this message, things won't be the same for you. Your healing starts now. The first layer of pain is being pulled back. Heaven has begun surgery. You don't need to understand it all, you just need to yield. Type 777 in the comments if this exposed what you've been carrying in silence. This is not the end of your story. This is the unveiling of a chosen one. You've been looking in the wrong direction for far too long. Chosen one. The person who hurt you is never the true enemy. The one who lied, manipulated, walked away and left you broken. They were a pawn, a puppet, a mask worn by something far more sinister. You thought it was them. You personalized the betrayal, but heaven is pulling back the curtain, and what's standing behind it will shake you. You are in a war you didn't start but were born into. The moment light was detected in your spirit, darkness marked you as a target. That's why the attacks came early. That's why your childhood held confusion and rejection. The devil doesn't waste bullets, he targets threats. And you, chosen one, have been a threat to the kingdom of darkness since your first breath. But the attacks didn't come with horns or fire. They came with smiles, with soft voices, with people who knew exactly how to get close enough to wound you. This is why it cut so deep. It wasn't an outsider, it was someone allowed in, someone you trusted, someone who saw your vulnerability and chose to misuse it. But understand, this was not just a bad relationship, it was a spiritual ambush. You've been angry at people not realizing the assignment was never about them. It was about what was inside you, that anointing, that light, that sense of divine purpose. Even you didn't fully understand. It intimidated demons, and the enemy knew he couldn't stop what was in you unless he distorted how you saw yourself. So he sent someone. They didn't know their full role. They were broken too, used by spirits that promised them validation, control, or even love. But they became a weapon in the enemy's hand. Emma, straight at your heart. And they almost succeeded, but almost is where grace stepped in. Chosen one, you need to hear this. It wasn't just a toxic relationship, it was a demonic strategy. That friend who kept you second guessing yourself. That family member who drained your confidence with every word. That leader who masked manipulation as mentorship. That lover who gaslit you into silence. Every one of them had an assignment. Not all were willing, but all were used. You are not crazy, you are not too sensitive. You are being attacked spiritually through the disguise of human relationships. You weren't just betrayed, you were targeted. And now God is bringing clarity. You don't wrestle against flesh and blood. You never did. As Paul reminds us in Ephesians 6, Sharas, for our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. This is the battlefield where your heart was wounded. And this is the battlefield where your spirit is now rising. You've been questioning everything, wondering why that person couldn't love you, why they changed, why they suddenly turned against you. Stop asking, stop replaying. Heaven is telling you they were a tool. The real enemy never had a face. The real enemy hated your joy, your light, your voice. And when he couldn't destroy you directly, he used those close to you to weaken you from the inside. But you didn't break. You bent, yes, you wept, you shrunk, but deep inside something remained. A flicker of fire that couldn't be put out. And that fire, chosen one, is about to become a blaze. This is where you stop blaming the vessel and start warring against the spirit. This is where you stop rehearsing pain and start reclaiming power. That's the enemy's greatest fear. Not just that you survive, but that you'd wake up. that you'd realize this whole time he was playing behind the scenes. He needed you confused. He needed you bound. He needed you bitter. Because as long as you stayed there, he didn't have to worry about you walking in your calling. But the veil is lifting now. And once you see the real enemy, you stop giving your power away to the wrong ones. Forgiveness becomes easier when you understand this. It doesn't mean you excuse what they did. It means you reclaim your peace. You stop letting the puppet ruin your life while the puppeteer hides in the shadows. Forgiveness is not weakness, it's spiritual warfare. It says, I see who was really behind this, and I choose to rise. You are not here by accident. This message is not random. God needed to tell you, my child, it was never them. It was never just about you getting hurt. It was about stopping your voice, stealing your joy, distorting your identity. And now that you know you cannot go back to blindness, this is divine confrontation. And with confrontation comes clarity. Not all who enter your life are meant to stay. Not all who speak into your spirit are sent by God. You are in a season now where discernment must rise. You cannot afford to keep embracing what heaven is exposing. Some of you are still connected to people who are spiritual liabilities. You think you're helping them, but they are draining you. They are keeping you tethered to pain that God is trying to free you from. And every time you excuse their behavior, you're reinforcing the lie. The enemy told you that you're not worth more, but you are. You are worth freedom. You are worth joy. You are worth wholeness. And heaven will no longer allow your loyalty to the wrong people to sabotage your calling. This is a divine unveiling. Who hurt you? God knows who. Betrayed you? God saw. But more than identifying the vessel, heaven is calling you to step back and see the war, to stop shooting at pawns and start dismantling the strongholds behind them. You are rising now. Not just healed, but wise. Not just free, but armored. Because once you see the enemy's tactics, he loses power. And once you reclaim your peace, you step into authority. This is your moment of clarity. Let it burn away the confusion. Let it awaken your discernment. Let it shift your focus from pain to purpose. The wound may have been deep, but your spirit is deeper. And what is in you is greater than what came against you. You thought it was personal, but it was never just about you. It was a calculated strike against your destiny, chosen one. The betrayal you experienced wasn't random, it was strategic. It was designed, timed, and executed with one goal: to take you out before you ever discovered who you really were. Think back, remember the moment it happened. That word, that silence, that switch in their eyes. It felt like something shifted in the atmosphere, because it did. That moment of betrayal was not born in flesh. It was crafted in the unseen realm, meant to derail your divine assignment, and it almost worked. What they did to you wasn't just wrong, it was intentional. The lies they spoke, the way they turned others against you, the manipulation, it was rehearsed in darkness before it reached your ears. They didn't just abandon you, they assassinated your character, and they smiled while doing it. But hear this: God allowed it not to destroy you, but to reveal you. You see, before elevation comes exposure. Before your crown is placed, your character must be refined. And nothing refines is like betrayal. Nothing reveals the strength of your spirit like watching the very ones you loved become weapons in the enemy's hand. This is why it hurt so much. It wasn't just that they walked away. It's that They knew what they were doing. They targeted your insecurities. They studied your heart, then used it against you. And still you showed mercy. Still you prayed for them. Even when you wept in secret, that wasn't weakness, that was spiritual maturity. But don't mistake that grace for forgetfulness. Heaven remembers, and the books have been opened. What they thought was private pain is now public evidence before the courts of heaven. As David declared in Psalm 56, by you keep track of all my sorrows. You have collected all my tears in your bottle. You've recorded each one in your book, chosen one. Nothing you endured went unnoticed. Nothing you suffered was wasted. Heaven documented every moment. You were attacked because your destiny was visible in the spirit. You were betrayed because your name was whispered in hell as a threat. And because they couldn't stop you physically, they tried to wound you emotionally. The goal was clear. Paralyze the chosen one with pain, silence their voice, disrupt their focus, delay their purpose. But here you are, still breathing, still standing, still chosen. You need to understand how the enemy works. He doesn't always come with rage or chaos. Sometimes he comes wrapped in comfort, in familiarity, in relationships that seem harmless until they reveal their true purpose. And by the time you see it, you've already been bitten. But God is reversing the venom. What once poisoned you will now be used to prophesy. What was once pain will become platform. That betrayal that nearly ended you, it will now fuel your rise. Because the enemy made a mistake. He thought hurting you would bury you, but he forgot you're a seed. And what happens to a seed when it's buried? It grows. Chosen one, you are growing in secret, rooted in truth, watered by tears, and soon you will break the surface. The ones who left you in darkness will watch you blossom in glory, not because of who you are, but because of the one who called you. And yes, they're going to regret it. Not because you wish them harm, but because they'll finally see what they mishandled. They'll realize they weren't rejecting you. They were rejecting their only encounter with the divine. You were a door to healing, to grace, to light, and they slammed it shut. That's not your burden anymore. That's their consequence. The truth is, God was using it all. Every heartbreak, every lie, every abandonment, it was shaping you, teaching you, crushing the parts of you that relied too heavily on man's approval. You had to lose them to find you. And in finding you, you found him. This is what the enemy fears the most. Not just that you're healing, but that you're awakening, that you're finally seeing the pattern, that you've stopped blaming yourself, that the fog is lifting, because an awakened, chosen one is unstoppable. There's a fire in you now that wasn't there before, a wisdom forged through pain, a discernment sharpened by betrayal. You don't move the same, you don't speak the same, you don't trust the same. And that's not bitterness, it's elevation. God doesn't waste betrayal, he transforms it. He takes the knife they left in your back and turns it into a key. And that key opens doors no man can shut. You're about to walk through one, not with fear, but with authority. Don't go back. Don't explain. Don't beg for understanding. You're not obligated to re-enter places that wounded you just because you miss who you thought they were. Grieve who they pretended to be, but don't resurrect what God buried. This next season requires clarity. And that means seeing betrayal not as a curse, but as a course correction. You were on your way to destruction, and God used their disloyalty to root your life. What felt like the end was a divine redirection. Now rise, not bitter, but bold. Not vengeful, but victorious. You are the chosen one. And your journey isn't ending, it's just beginning. If your spirit bears witness to this truth, Comment 111 below. Let heaven and earth record your awakening. Let the enemy know the one he tried to destroy is alive and rising. You were attacked early for a reason. Before you could speak the fullness of your truth, before you could even name your calling, darkness saw the light in you. It recognized the weight of your destiny and decided it had to move swiftly. Chosen one. The assault against your soul didn't begin with your first mistake. It began with your first breath. You've asked yourself so many times, why me? Why was your childhood so heavy? Why did they treat you like the outsider? Why did you feel different even when you tried to fit in? It wasn't your imagination. You were different, set apart, and hell knew it. There is a spiritual reality most don't want to face. Not all suffering is random. Some wounds are strategic. Some storms are summoned. Some betrayals are allowed because what's inside you carries eternal consequence. The enemy doesn't harass the ordinary. He wages war against the extraordinary. And you, chosen one, have been extraordinary from the very beginning. There's something terrifying to the kingdom of darkness about the idea of you rising. The very thought of you walking in your identity, using your voice, breaking generational cycles, freeing others, has stirred the opposition against you for years. But they were never afraid of your present. They were afraid of your becoming. That's why the battles came before the blessings. That's why you were attacked before you even understood who you were, because darkness operates in foresight. It doesn't just react, it preempts. It doesn't wait for your power to manifest. It tries to sever the seed before it ever breaks soil. They feared your becoming. You didn't come from strength, but you are strength. You didn't emerge from power, but power flows through you. You are never the loudest, the most visible, the most praised, but you carried something unseen, something they could feel and not explained, and that unsettled every insecure spirit around you. They saw it even when you didn't. They saw the way people were drawn to your presence, the peace you brought into chaotic places, the wisdom beyond your years, the joy that refused to die even after everything you endured. It irritated the spirits in them because what you carried exposed what they lacked. You walked into rooms and the atmosphere shifted, not because you were trying, but because you were chosen. That light in you forced masks to fall, revealed motives, stirred conviction. You made people uncomfortable without speaking a word. And so the enemy whispered to them. He convinced them to sabotage you before you realized who you were. So they gossiped, lied, manipulated, abandoned, all in an attempt to dim your light before it fully ignited. But what they failed to understand was this: you weren't fueled by their validation. You were fueled by God. Even as a child, you saw more, felt more. You were sensitive to what others ignored, and that sensitivity was not weakness, it was spiritual awareness. Heaven wired you to pick up what others missed. You were designed as a discerner. That's why you couldn't pretend. That's why surface level living never satisfied you. They tried to teach you how to shrink, how to be quiet, how to mold yourself to make them comfortable. But something inside you resisted. No matter how hard you tried to silence your truth, it kept resurfacing. Because when you're called by God, you can't stay hidden forever. Even your silence was loud. Your humility was loud. Your refusal to retaliate, to become like them, it spoke volumes. It announced your identity long before your mouth did. As we read in Jeremiah 1, "Woo, before I formed you in the womb. I knew you before you were born. I set you apart." That is not poetry. That is the foundation of your existence. You are not an afterthought. You are an assignment. That what they couldn't stand, you carried a grace they couldn't imitate. You carried a favor they couldn't understand. You operated in mercy when they expected revenge. You forgave when others would have collapsed. You kept moving when others would have collapsed. But make no mistake, your survival was not accidental. It was prophetic. Because your survival was a threat. Every time you got back up, darkness trembled. Every time you praised through pain, the enemy's grip loosened. Every time you chose love instead of bitterness, you declared war on hell. And now you're on the verge of becoming the version of you they tried to stop is emerging. Stronger, sharper, softer in heart, but harder to fool. You are becoming what the enemy feared all along. A weapon of truth, a vessel of glory, a light that cannot be hidden. You've been through more than most, but that's why you're trusted with more than most. God knew what He placed in you. He knew what you'd endure, and He knew you'd survive it. Not just for yourself, but for others. Your becoming is not for applause, it's for impact. The ones who underestimated you, rejected you, wounded you. They were playing their role in a much bigger narrative. Their betrayal became the soil, their words became the wind, their absence became the sunlight, and all of it grew you. Now the roots are deep, the foundation is solid, the fruit is about to show. No more shrinking, no more explaining, no more apologizing for your presence. You've been through the fire and didn't burn. You've walked through betrayal and didn't lose your heart. You are ready. Not because you feel it, but because heaven has declared it. And what heaven declares, no man can undo. They told you it was denial, that you were imagining things, that it wasn't that deep, but it was that deep, chosen one. The pain you went through wasn't just a moment. It was a message, a divine delay disguised as rejection. Every door that closed in your face was not God saying no. It was God whispering, not here, not yet. You've spent so much time questioning your worth based on who walked away, what didn't work, and where you were left behind. But the truth is, heaven was never silent. It was strategic, because not every opportunity is a blessing. Not every connection is a covenant. Some things you cried over were actually divine rescues. God blocked it because He saw what you couldn't. He saw what was in their hearts. He heard the conversations behind your back. He watched the way they smiled at you while plotting your downfall. And He shut the door not to punish you, but to protect you. You didn't lose them, they were removed. What you thought was rejection was redirection. What you assumed was a failure was a filter. Heaven was filtering your life. Every exit, every loss, every breakdown, it was the refining fire of purpose. God was isolating you to prepare you. Because when you're chosen, you don't get the luxury of normal timing. Your path will look delayed to others, but it's precise in heaven's calendar. You are not behind, you are hidden. And that hiding wasn't punishment, it was preservation. Do you realize what God kept you from? You would have given your heart to the wrong ones. You would have planted seeds in cursed soil. You would have made covenants with people who secretly hated your light. But God didn't let it happen. Not because you weren't ready, but because they weren't worthy, chosen one. You were born for a higher frequency. You cannot thrive in low places. That's why you were rejected in rooms that couldn't hold your anointing. That's why people grew uncomfortable around your purpose. Not because you did something wrong, but because your presence revealed what they refuse to confront. As Paul reminds us in Romans 8, our Shabbat, and we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. That's not just a verse, it's a verdict. Everything is working for your good, even when it hurts, especially when it hurts. You were never forgotten. Heaven didn't overlook you. You were being reserved, set apart, hidden until the appointed time. And now that time is drawing near, the delay is breaking. You're going to begin seeing doors open you didn't even knock on. Connections aligning that feel divine. Resources appearing at the moment of need, because the same God who delayed you is now about to accelerate you. This is why you must not despise the season you just walked through. It shaped you, it tested you, it emptied you of pride and filled you with discernment. That dry place forced you to find water from the well that never runs dry. You don't see it yet, but something has shifted. There's a quickening in the spirit around you. People who once ignored you are suddenly paying attention. Opportunities you thought were lost are circling back. The grace that once felt absent is beginning to hover again. But this time you're not walking in with open wounds. You're walking in with holy fire. You've been broken, but now you are built. You've been silent, but now you carry sound. You've been hidden, but now heaven is announcing you. And when heaven speaks, the earth must listen, chosen one. If this resonates deep within you, consider sowing into this message by supporting this channel. When you like, comment, share, and subscribe, you're not just staying connected. You're helping this word reach others like you who are still in their hidden season. You become part of the breakthrough. And if you're led to give, know that your generosity fuels the flow of prophetic clarity to others waiting for their moment of release. This isn't about transaction. It's about transformation. Every act of support expands the reach of this revelation, and someone somewhere is waiting for the same word that reached you right now. So stay aligned, stay connected, stay covered, because your season of delay is shifting into a season of demonstration. The world is about to see what God was working on in secret, and when they see it, they'll know that delay was divine. There's a pain that's been following you like a shadow. It doesn't speak loudly, but it's always there in your quiet moments, in your overthinking, in the silence after the crowd leaves. Chosen one, this pain has a name and heaven is calling it out. You've tried to move on, you've tried to bury it under busyness, laughter, even faith declarations, but God sees what others don't. He sees the memory you avoid, the face that flashes across your mind when things go wrong, the moment you froze in time, stuck between what happened and what should have been. The pain wasn't vague, it was personal. It had a name, a voice, a scent, a presence. It left you questioning, not just them, but yourself. Was it your fault? Were you not enough? Did you miss a sign? But the truth is, this was never about your worth. It was about an ancient war against your becoming. The enemy didn't want you whole. He wanted you haunted. And so he sent someone to mark your memory with trauma. Someone who would make you question the very core of who you are. Someone who would plant seeds of shame that still try to bloom in your soul. But God is digging it up now. Not to hurt you, but to heal you. Because the wound has festered in silence for too long. And heaven is not willing to let it remain buried beneath false peace. You can't walk in full authority while part of you still bleeds in secret. You've mastered the surface, but the Spirit of God is after the roots. It was declared in Luke 10, Sheol, I have given you authority to trample on snakes and scorpions and to overcome all the power of the enemy. Nothing will harm you. That includes the spiritual residue of what they did, the fragments of your identity that shattered in their hands. You see, some people weren't just lessons, they were attacks. They weren't just unhealthy, they were demonic strategies. And naming the pain is the first step to disarming its power. Because what stays hidden furs, but what is exposed to light loses its grip. You've been faithful but quiet, anointed but emotionally numb, smiling but exhausted. And the reason it lingers is because you haven't told the truth, not to others, but to yourself. You haven't faced how deeply it cut, how much it altered your sense of safety, how it made you doubt your ability to hear God clearly, because how could something that felt so divine turn into a source of so much torment? That's the enemy's craft. Hadiske's destruction as love. He wraps pain in the language of prophecy. He sends counterfeits wearing crowns. And by the time you realize it, your heart is already tangled. And shame tells you it's too late. But God is not intimidated by your wounds. He's the only one who can handle your full story. And still call you chosen, chosen one. You're not crazy for feeling the way you do. You're not weak because you can't shake the memories. You are healing, and healing requires honesty. God isn't asking you to forget it. He's asking you to face it so He can redeem it. You're in a spiritual operating room now, and the procedure is delicate. God is touching the places others avoided. He's not just binding your wounds. He's pulling out the lie they planted. The lie that said you're too much or not enough. The lie that said you're cursed. The lie that said God left you. That's not your story. That's not your name. That's not your ending. This is the moment the pain begins to lose its power. You are not defined by what happened to you. You are defined by what God placed inside of you. And no betrayal, no rejection, no failure can cancel your calling. The one who hurt you thought they were ending something, but they were activating something. Your healing journey is your launching pad. Every day you rise from the ashes. You shake the foundations of hell because the enemy expected you to break permanently. But grace had other plans. Let them remember your past. Heaven is rewriting your future. And this time your healing will be complete. Not patched, not hidden, complete. You won't have to fake your joy. It will flow from a place of peace. Not because you forgot the pain, but because you faced it with God. You're not weak, you're wise. And wisdom doesn't avoid the wound, it walks through it, hand in hand with the one who heals. Comment. It's breaking now. If your heart feels this shift, there were whispers made in places you couldn't hear. Vows spoken over your life that you never agreed to. Words laced with envy, curses wrapped in gossip, silent agreements made in the dark. Chosen one, what you've been feeling wasn't just emotional residue. It was spiritual warfare born from a hidden covenant made against you. The ones who smiled in your face but resented your presence. The ones who clapped for you publicly but cursed you privately. Their mouths were used, but the true architect was the enemy. They weren't just angry, they were enlisted because hell saw your name rising in the spirit and it sent out a contract. The contract wasn't signed with ink, it was sealed with bitterness, envy, and betrayal. Every lie spoken about you was a threat. Every time they mocked your efforts, every time they predicted your failure, they were weaving something, a covering of limitation, a net of spiritual resistance. And you wondered why progress felt so slow, why every step forward was met with pressure. It wasn't just life. It was a system designed to choke the promise inside you. But here's what they didn't account for. Heaven records everything. Those hidden covenants, those agreements spoken in pride and witchcraft, they are now being broken one by one. The spiritual bonds that held you down are being severed. What was meant to bind you is becoming your platform, because God doesn't just rescue, He reverses. He doesn't just deliver, He delivers and displays chosen one. Your name has been spoken in rooms of both war and worship. And now the courts of heaven have ruled in your favor. What was done in secret is being dismantled in the open. The curses are returning to sender. The altars built against your peace are being torn down, not by your hand, but by His. As it was declared in Isaiah 54, no weapon forged against you will prevail, and you will refute every tongue that accuses you. Not some weapons, not occasional arrows, no weapon. The covenant they made failed the moment you survived. They underestimated the God within you. They assumed your silence was surrender, but God was watching. He allowed the attack to expose what needed to be cut from your life. He allowed the betrayal to redirect you. But now He's stepping in, not with a whisper, but with a thunderous judgment. Enough. This is divine intervention on your behalf. The spiritual fatigue you felt, the strange heaviness, the dreams that left you shaken, those were signs. They weren't imagination. They were alerts from heaven that something was trying to lay claim to what God declared as His. But here's the greater truth. No one can curse what God has blessed. They may gather, they may scheme, but their power is limited. You've been hidden, but not unguarded. You've been under pressure, but never alone. And the pressure wasn't to crush you, it was to press the oil from your life. Oil that now anoints you to walk in deliverance, not just for yourself, but for others. Every word curse is broken, every soul tie severed, every spiritual trap dismantled. The ground beneath you is shifting. You may not see it yet, but the resistance is weakening. The fog is lifting. The access is returning. What was blocked is now opening, because when God declares war on what declared war on you, the outcome is already decided. They had plans for your downfall. They envisioned your silence, but instead they will witness your rise, not in arrogance, but in divine assurance, because God doesn't allow attacks to go unaddressed. He is both the lamb and the lion has roared. Let this sink in. Every painful delay, every season of confusion, every door that wouldn't open, it was all entangled in this spiritual web. And now that the web is cut, your acceleration will look like redemption on display. This is more than vindication, it's resurrection. What they tried to bury, God is raising. What they tried to curse, God is crowning. What they tried to end, God is beginning anew. And you walk forward unshackled. No more questioning your worth. No more shrinking to make others comfortable. No more spiritual fog. You have clarity now. You have authority. Not because of what they did, but because of what God has declared. Chosen one, the hidden covenant they made against you is broken. The only covenant that remains is the one sealed by blood. The one that calls you child, warrior, overcomer. And that is unbreakable. There's a reason you never fit in. A reason you were always too much for some and too different for others. You were never meant to blend in, chosen one. You were spiritually marked from the beginning, not by man, but by heaven. And that mark made you a target long before you even knew who you were. Your battles didn't start when you made your first mistake. They started when you took your first breath. You were a marked one, seen by heaven and noticed by hell. There's something in you that has always carried weight, even when you didn't recognize it. And darkness felt it. You walked into rooms and tension followed, not because you did anything, but because the spirits in others reacted to what was resting on you. There were times you questioned yourself, wondered why people treated you differently. But now you must understand your light has always disrupted their shadows. The rejection wasn't always personal, it was spiritual. From childhood, you saw things others didn't. You felt things others ignored. You were sensitive to pain, to energy, to shifts in the room. That wasn't weakness, that was spiritual awareness. You were being trained in discernment before you even had words for it. And because of that, the enemy tried to silence you early. He wanted to desensitize you, to make you numb, to convince you that what you sensed was imagination. Because if he could dull your spirit, he could delay your assignment. But it didn't work. Despite the trauma, the confusion, the seasons of wandering, you never stopped being marked. That fire never went out, even when you thought it did, even when the pain fell louder than the promise. Something inside you kept burning. That was in your strength. That was your seal. The enemy didn't come for your possessions. He came for your identity. Because if he could confuse who you are, he could derail what you're called to do. That's why the attacks were so personal. Why? They targeted your mind, your emotions, your relationships. It was never about what you had. It was about what you carried. Your spirit carries light, not the kind that flickers with mood, but the kind that ignites atmospheres. Your voice shifts things. Your prayers disrupt sequels. Your very presence unsettles spiritual wickedness. And that chosen one is why they couldn't just ignore you. They dismissed you. Yes, marked you, isolated you. But even in rejection, they couldn't stop watching you, because what's on your life commands attention, even from those who don't understand it. You've been carrying something holy, something weighty, something ancient. You don't walk alone. You walk with legacy, with generational authority. And that's why hell's been after you. Because if you ever realized who you are, the chains around your bloodline would begin to shatter. And now you're awakening. You're no longer confused by the warfare. You're not interpreting it as punishment. You're beginning to understand this is spiritual pushback. The attacks aren't signs that God left you. They're confirmation that He's near, that you're closer than ever to break through, that you're walking in the very path darkness tried to shut, as we read in Psalm 91. For He will command His angels concerning you to guard you in all your ways. That divine protection isn't theory, it's been your reality. You've survived what others didn't because heaven assigned angels to walk beside you. Even when you didn't know you needed them, you felt the weight of this assignment. It's lonely, it's exhausting. There are days you feel like giving up. Even then, something supernatural holds you. Something invisible refuses to let you quit. That's the mark. That's the covenant. That's the Spirit of God testifying within you that you were chosen for more. This is why you can't go back. Why old patterns no longer satisfy. Why familiar spaces feel uncomfortable. You're shedding old skins, stepping out of borrowed identities. You're being aligned with who you've always been in the eyes of God. And with that comes authority. Not loud, not performative, but unshakable. The kind of authority that doesn't need to prove itself. that walks in quiet boldness, that casts out darkness by simply entering the room. That's what you carry, and that's what the enemy fears. You don't need a title. You don't need a platform. You don't need validation. You've been approved in secret. And heaven is now orchestrating your emergence. Not all at once, but piece by piece, step by step, layer by layer, until the version of you that hell tried to kill becomes the very vessel God uses to set captives free. You're not just coming out of this season, you're coming out marked by fires, marked by trials, yes, but more than that, marked by glory. They didn't stumble into your life by accident. They weren't just random people passing through. Chosen one. The ones who hurt you, those who drained you, confused you, twisted your emotions, they were assigned. You weren't simply unlucky in relationships or friendships. You were strategically targeted by spiritual forces that sent people wrapped in false peace, carrying hidden agendas. They came smiling, but something in you hesitated. You didn't know why, but you felt it. The unease, the subtle tension. Your spirit sensed what your heart couldn't explain. And now looking back, you see it clearly. They were sent not to love, but to distract. Sent not to build, but to bind. Sent not to grow you, but to grind your identity into dust. It wasn't coincidence, it was spiritual infiltration. Because your life has always been marked, and darkness sends counterfeits to chosen people. Some came with words that echoed scripture but lacked the spirit. Some came with attraction, charisma, and timing that felt divine. But it wasn't, it was demonic coordination. Their entire purpose was to draw you off course just enough to delay the divine appointment set before you. But you felt it, didn't you? You felt the shift in your mind, the confusion, the self-doubt, the war in your spirit every time you tried to rise. They may have been charming on the outside, but their presence pulled you away from prayer, away from peace, away from clarity. That's because they were never your assignment. They were your distraction. It was all a setup to make you forfeit what was already yours, to exhaust you emotionally so you wouldn't have strength for the door God was about to open, to tangle your soul so deeply that even your prayers felt blocked, but something in you resisted. Even in the fog you began to see, even through the pain, your spirit started discerning. And now you're here, awake, aware, and no longer accessible to the same patterns that once held you. They wore the right faces, but they had the wrong spirit. Some were sent to marry your weakness, not partner with your purpose. Others were assigned to monitor you, to mimic support while quietly draining your confidence. Still others came, not to destroy you, but to delay you. And in spiritual warfare, delay is just as dangerous as destruction. Chosen one, you don't owe anyone access to your destiny. Just because they entered your life doesn't mean they were meant to stay. Some people were only allowed in because you were still healing, but now you're whole. And that wholeness requires a new level of boundaries. Let them go. Not in bitterness, but in wisdom, because God is doing something new. And it cannot be built on the shaky foundation of false connections, as Jesus warned in Matthew 7. Watch out for false prophets. They come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ferocious wolves. That verse doesn't only apply to church, it applies to your circle, your relationships, your counsel. You must discern who's feeding your faith and who's draining your discernment. You are not paranoid, you are protected. And your spirit knows the difference between peace and performance. If someone's presence makes you question your own clarity, that's not alignment, it's warfare. And God is calling you to close the door. This next season requires clean vision, uncluttered emotions, untangled spirits. And that means cutting ties with anything that carries confusion, because peace is a confirmation, and chaos, no matter how charming, is always a sign. They were a sign, but now they're exposed. You've grown too much to return to old entanglements. Your spirit is sharper, your time more precious, your heart more guarded, not from fear, but from wisdom. You've been through enough to know that not everyone deserves access to your anointing. You are not mean for setting boundaries. You are not hard for being discerning. You are not selfish for choosing peace. You are chosen. And with that choosing comes clarity. You can't afford to be distracted by familiar spirits wearing new faces. Let this be the season you stop explaining yourself and begin protecting what's sacred. You're calling your mind, your energy. Comment 999. If you feel the confirmation in your soul, let it be marked in the spirit. The assignments have been cancelled and your discernment is now fully active. You've been accused in silence, misjudged by people who never asked your side, mocked by those who couldn't see your process, only your pause. But chosen one, heaven has seen it all. And now the divine court has ruled. You don't have to defend yourself. You don't have to chase explanations or prove your purity. God has already spoken in places you've never stepped into. The verdict is in, the accusations won't stick. The shame has been lifted. The sentence is reversed. This wasn't just emotional pain, it was spiritual persecution. You were put on trial in conversations you weren't invited to. They called your integrity into question, not knowing you were wrestling with God in secret. But while they spread opinions, heaven was drafting vindication. They saw the surface, but God saw your heart. And because of that, He's now doing what men never could, clearing your name in the spirit. Every label they threw on you, every lie they whispered behind your back, it has now become fertilizer for your next elevation. They spoke death, but heaven speaks resurrection. They tried to bury you in false narratives, but the truth is rising like a roar. As we read in Psalm 135, for the Lord will vindicate His people, have compassion on His servants. Vindication isn't just comfort, it's confirmation that you belong to Him. And when He speaks for you, no one can override the decree. You're walking into rooms with clean hands and a clear spirit. You've cried enough tears for things you didn't cause. You've shouldered burdens that were never yours. And now God is lifting the weight off your soul. The gavel has dropped. You are free. They thought your silence was weakness, but your silence was sacred. It allowed God to speak louder. And now He's speaking through outcomes, through unexpected favor, through divine opportunities. The ones who questioned your value are about to witness your rise. They'll know it was God. This is not revenge. This is restoration. What they said you never recover from is becoming your testimony. What they mocked is becoming your message. You were not disqualified. You were hidden for this moment, and now that moment has come. You're being reintroduced, not by marketing, but by manifestation, not by applause, but by fruit. The results will speak. The glory will testify. And you won't have to say a word, chosen one. If you felt this confirmation deep within, we invite you to help spread this prophetic fire. When you like, comment, and share, you amplify the reach of truth. You become a digital torch bearer, helping others find the clarity they've been praying for. And if you've been blessed by this word and feel led, consider supporting this channel. Your support, whether through sharing, subscribing, or sowing a seed, fuels the release of more divine messages for those in their own battles. You're not just a viewer, you're part of the movement. This is more than content, it's a call to purpose, a lifeline for the chosen who feel forgotten. Heaven is moving, vindication is already unfolding, and your name, once dragged through the dust, is now rising in divine light. Walk boldly, walk freely, walk knowing that God has ruled and His word is final. There's a place God put you that felt more like punishment than protection. A season that looked like abandonment but was actually divine concealment. Chosen one, you weren't cast aside, you were hidden, sheltered, preserved. Because the anointing on your life required separation before elevation. You asked, why am I alone? Why did everyone disappear? Why is nothing moving? But God wasn't being silent. He was shielding you. He covered you in the shadow of His wings, not to hide you from the world, but to hide you from what the world could do to you prematurely. Every delay was divine. Every shut door was mercy. Every lost connection was a heaven-sent exit strategy, because what God is doing in you can't be rushed. You don't microwave glory. You don't manufacture depth, you endure for it. You're formed in quiet places where applause can't distract and pride can take root. That place where no one saw you, God saw you. When it seemed like nothing was happening, everything was happening. You were being emptied of people pleasing. You were being purged of idols. You were being trained to hear God's voice without noise. The wilderness wasn't your enemy. It was your womb. It carried the weight of your next. It was the in-between space where you shed old skin and stepped into sacred knowing. You wanted the spotlight, but God gave you solitude. You wanted growth, but He gave you grief, because the deeper the root, the stronger the fruit. And what's coming requires depth. As we read in Exodus 33, Ashar, when my glory passes by, I will put you in a cliff in the rock and cover you with my hand until I have passed by. That's what God did for you. He placed you in a cleft, a crevice of divine safety. While He worked behind the scenes, you weren't forgotten, you were covered. He didn't let you rise when others did, because your foundation needed to be stronger. He didn't let certain people stay because their presence would have corrupted your perspective. He didn't allow some platforms to open because your voice wasn't meant to echo. It was meant to transform. Chosen one, your hiding was heaven's holding pattern, a place where your identity was protected from contamination, where your gifts were shielded from exploitation, where your heart was healed from human opinions. Because God doesn't send His chosen into battle unarmored. He fortifies them in private. You were fortified through rejection, through prayer, through the nights you felt unseen and the mornings you wondered if anything would change. But the change was happening in you. You became different, more resilient, more discerning, more dangerous to the darkness that once laughed at your immaturity. You no longer chase what's not meant for you. You no longer entertain every voice. You've been refined by the very fire meant to destroy you. And now the covering is lifting. You're stepping out of the cliff slowly, stronger, not with noise, but with presence, not with desperation, but with direction. You know who you are now. You know what you carry. You know what it cost you. And because of that, you'll protect it differently this time. You're no longer begging to be seen. You're preparing to be sent. They'll look at you and wonder where you came from. They won't recognize the version of you that emerges from this. That's because you weren't just resting, you were resurrecting. What they thought was your silence was your setup. You'll walk differently, speak differently, love differently. You'll carry a depth that only the hidden ones possess. And those who once overlooked you will feel the weight of your transformation. You didn't waste time. You were being woven. Every unanswered prayer, every closed door, every lonely night, they were all stitches in a garment heaven was customing. And now you wear it not with pride, but with reverence. You've been hidden for purpose. Now you'll be revealed for impact. They saw your pain, but they didn't know your promise. They judge your weeping, but never imagined your rising chosen one. The ones who hurt you, the ones who left you when you were low. They're about to witness something they never expected, your ascension. You see, God doesn't raise you in private just to keep you hidden forever. There comes a time when heaven pulls back the veil, when the same people who spoke your downfall must watch your elevation, not because you needed their validation, but because God will prepare a table in the presence of your enemies. You've endured in silence. You've healed in the dark. You've obeyed God when it made no sense. And now the reward is about to be public. The very ones who doubted your purpose will have no choice but to see the evidence. You were not cast away. You were calibrated. What they interpreted as weakness was wisdom. What they mocked as failure was formation. And now the shift is happening, subtly at first. Then suddenly there will be no need for announcements, no need to argue your case. God will do the revealing. He will cause your steps to be seen, your words to carry weight, your presence to bring peace. And those who misread your journey will be confronted by the fruit of your obedience. As it is written in Psalm 23, "Woo you, prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows." This is not a metaphor, it's a moment. It's the divine justice that flows from heaven's throne. A visible vindication, a sacred reversal. They expected you to stay broken, but your healing has become undeniable. They assumed you retreat, but you are rising with authority. Not loud, not proud, but undeniably marked by the presence of God. And it will shake them, not because you sought revenge, but because you carried on. You grew while they mocked. You built while they whispered. You stayed planted while they scattered. And now the harvest has come, and it is unmistakable. They will hear of you, they will speak your name in awe, but it will not be you. They marvel at it, will be the hand of God on your life, the unexplainable favor, the doors opening, the grace you carry. They will realize they didn't just mishandle you, they mishandled an assignment from heaven. Do not gloat, do not shrink, simply walk in what God has made ready. This is your time, not to boast, but to burn, to illuminate what's been birthed in darkness, to carry the light that only the chosen can bear. Your rise is not a reaction, it is a revelation, a revealing of what always existed under the surface, and now nothing can stop it. You've been through the crushing, you've passed the test, and the oil is flowing. Let them witness it. Let the ones who counted you out see what God counted in. You are no longer trying to prove anything. You are simply walking in it. And the proof will follow you. No more hiding, no more requesting, no more wondering if the pain was worth it. It was. And heaven is confirming that now, not just to you, but through you. Comment, "It's my time," if you feel the weight of this confirmation stirring in your spirit. There were nights you wept into your pillow with no words left to pray. Mornings you woke up still heavy, still tired, still aching from battles no one saw. But chosen one, Not one tear was wasted. Not one cry went unnoticed. Heaven has been recording every sorrow. Your tears are testimony. They weren't weakness, they were sacred. Every drop of grief was a declaration in the spirit. I'm still here, even in silence. Even when your faith trembled, you kept showing up, you kept believing, and God took note. Because to him your tears weren't just emotion, they were evidence. Evidence of your endurance, of your worship, of your surrender. The world doesn't always understand tears, but heaven honors them. In the courts of the Lord, tears have weight. They speak where words fail. They testify when your voice is gone, and they move the heart of God in ways you cannot fathom, as David wrote in Psalm 56. But you keep track of all my sorrows. You have collected all my tears in your bottle. You have recorded each one in your book. This is not poetry, it is reality. Your pain has been preserved, not to haunt you, but to vindicate you. There is power in a tear cried in obedience, a tear that falls while you choose to worship, a tear that rolls down while you declare, still I will trust you. Heaven hears those tears louder than the loudest shout. They pierce through dimensions. They speak of loyalty, of crushing, of a vessel being formed under pressure. And now those tears are returning to you, not as sorrow, but as recompense. What you wept over, God is about to resurrect. What you mourned, God is preparing to redeem. Those moments you thought were lost to time, buried under fatigue and frustration, God is pulling them out of the archives. He is turning your tears into testimony and your heartbreak into harvest. There are people who walked away from you because they never saw you cry. They assumed you were fine, that your strength was effortless, but what they missed was the cost. They didn't see the prayers soaked in tears, the fasting laced with weeping, the nights of pleading when it felt like heaven was silent. But heaven wasn't silent, it was listening. God doesn't just watch your pain, He gathers it. Not one drop falls to the ground without purpose. In His divine economy, nothing is wasted. The pain you endured, the loneliness, the ache, they are seeds. And now a divine reversal is unfolding. You are walking into the very season you cried for. Slowly, subtly, the shifts are happening. The peace is returning. The opportunities are aligning. The doors are moving on their hinges. Not because you fought your way in, but because your tears spoke on your behalf. This is a season where you will no longer cry the same tears. Not because everything is perfect, but because you've been fortified, you've been refined. The tears you cry now are different. They are tears of release, of joy, of reverence for the God who carried you through it all. Chosen one, you are not fragile, you are faithful. And heaven counts the tears of the faithful. Don't despise your history. Don't regret the moments of weakness. They were holy, they were honest. And God used every one of them to draw you closer. Every tear-carved space in your soul for deeper wisdom, greater compassion, sharper discernment. And now that well within you is deep, you'll speak and people will feel the weight of what you've lived through. You'll minister not from theory, but from oil pressed through weeping. You'll comfort others because you remember what it was like to cry with no comfort but God. And your presence will break chains, not because of eloquence, but because of what you endured in secret. You are not who you were when this started. You are the refined, resurrected version of yourself. And your tears built that quietly, steadily, faithfully. Let this be your knowing. Nothing you've cried over will be in vain. The God who collected your sorrow is now writing a story of strength And in the pages of that story, your tears have become ink. There were times you sensed it. Something was off. A tightening in your chest, a sudden pause in your spirit, a heaviness you couldn't explain, but still you moved forward. You hoped for the best, ignored the warnings, silenced your discernment, chosen one. You've missed the signs before, but this time God is making it unmistakably clear. You are not being led by emotion anymore. You're being trained to follow revelation. Heaven is no longer whispering, it's roaring. The alarms are sounding in your soul, and what once could slip past your defenses now sets off a fire in your spirit. God is heightening your senses for what's ahead, because what's coming will require a level of clarity you've never walked in before. You cannot afford another counterfeit. You cannot absorb another delay. The price is too high. And so in His mercy, God is confronting you with truth that will not let you sleep until you obey